Hello, welcome, Snezzo back again, and you can see I have an assortment of chassis here, including the TDP PE1 conversion kit. I just unboxed this the other day and it's all built up now. I tore apart my kit version YD-2 SX3 purple, and that's what you see here. And the range of chassis here that I have laid out is for comparison, so I can show you the differences between the PE1 by Team Drift Vision that was developed by our buddies in Quebec and developed at the Elite Drift Shop Drift Track, which is very awesome. So now, as I was saying in that video, this is the first Canadian designed and manufactured conversion kit for Yokomo YD-2. And there are many out there, but yeah, this is the first one by Canadians. Awesome. Now, I'll show you around here. This, let me move our beautiful box out of the way. This is a Reeve D MC1 conversion kit, slide rack version. This had an SX3 gutted to build this car, and this has some extra version 2 hardware and some extra purpley bits on the lower arms and stuff, front bumper, brace, etc. So that's that car. This is also an MC1 slide rack. However, this has pretty much, I think, every single Reeve D upgrade on it for the most part. Pretty much almost every single upgrade. This car is owned by Brett of Strictly Sideways, track owner here. Yeah, I'm at the Strictly Sideways track, FYI. It's track side right now. Boys are getting some drifts in. And yeah, so this is a full, pretty much a full MC1. And so I can show you the comparisons of that as well. Over here is a stock, stock YD-2 RX, the new RX released one, where you get the carbon front bumper, the different plates, and everything's out the rear of it. So there's that for some comparison as well. And then this car over here is one probably not many people have seen. This is a Baula Fantasy Two. And this thing is pretty nuts, as you can see. And yeah, where is it? Fantasy 2. And I put this one in here just because it has such a way different design rear end, just to show you the difference on how each rear end of these cars works for comparison. Yeah, so having said all that, just to show you all the cars, what I can tell you about the TDP is I do like it a little bit more than the MC1 out of box. Just my personal opinion. I did like it a little bit more. I really like how the side bite is working on it, how much grip it is actually generating while drifting, so that's pretty good. Hello, Ricky. That's Devin of Team Hit and Run passing by there. Yeah, so I really like the way the TDP has been designed and the way it's working right now, and I can show you a few of those features. One thing I really like is the way the battery tray works. So you pop this downward and slide the battery out. So if I pop that downward, just get the slide going on here with my, hold on. Oh, hold on. It's hard to do this with one hand. There we go. There we go now. There we go. See? There we go. Look at that. That is really nice. So I like that. See, just pop it in. There it is. It's in. Now, my gyro's down here because my cables are a little too high for the upper deck, but gyro's supposed to go under here from what I've seen on TDP's product on their Facebook page when I was building up my car. So yeah, gyro's supposed to go under there. I really like the way the battery tray works. There isn't really much to tell you about the front end because it is literally all SX3 except for the front bumper. There is nowhere to bolt the front bumper brace such as this onto here. And I don't know why they did that, but they chose that for a reason. Probably to keep the front end a little bit more lighter, but maybe there'll be a future option or something coming later on. But yeah, so anyways, it's just literally just part of the front, or part of the chassis bottom lower plate. Makes a good grab handle though. So other than that, the other cool things I like is the little TDP logos engraved everywhere, including there on the pole. On the motor mount and on the transmission cases, which on this side's a bit buried. But what I really like is that Canadian leaf there. I'll make sure I can get it this time. Yeah, look at that. That really drives it home that it's from Canada. Look at that. Really cool. So other than that, yeah, I like the design of the shock tower. It's different. Kind of gives me that sort of walking like an Egyptian vibe. But you do get a really nice high mount for the shock position. which is really neat. And the way this is set up, the way I took a look on their page for some photos and from the instructions, we set it up with a squat style rear end. So as you can see, we got lots of positive camber here. But once we let the droop go, it sits down, and then we compress. We do some bound on the suspension. You can see that we are getting camber on squat. So we are getting suspension change and camber change on squat and all that. So that's how that's designed. Now, when you hit the throttle, it's going to dump the throttle, give you a bit of squat. So the idea is not to give you a ton of grip on straightaway, but it does actually grip up pretty good on the straightaway. So it does, you know, it'll go. That's nice. Now, particular interesting part, the main difference between the Reeve D kit and this kit is I'm going to bring my hand over here so I can roll the chassis as if she's drifting. When you roll the rear end, notice the rear tires. Notice how they barely move. Barely. Like they barely move. So that's the biggest difference is when this chassis, I say chassis as a joke, when this chassis rolls, yeah, the rear tires barely move, and so that gives really good for side bite. So right here with this sort of squatted set, I have this set at 1 degree for running. So when it's the chassis is rolling, that 1 degree barely changes. I think it maybe is going to 1/2 degree, if that. So that's really nice. That's really good, and I can really feel the side bite even with a minimal tune, Yokomo pink shock and basic big bore 4-hole pistons installed. I can still feel it, and what's impressing me is this is still doing this with the plastic arm and plastic upright in the rear. The ball position here is suggested by TDP, so I put it up there. The inner positions are wherever you'd like, so I stuck them on the lower side, second from the inside, and that seems to be working pretty good. So yeah, that roll center, that roll effect there, that's what I'm really noticing is the lack of movement when it rolls. The front end will roll around, as you can see. The front end will roll. That's natural. That happens normally. That's normal. That's all, like I said, SX3. So that's no big deal. See you. Have a good day. Someone's heading out there. But yeah, that's the biggest difference between the Reeve D. So if I move that guy over there, the TDP over there, and I bring in my Reeve D purple edition SX3 thing, right? So on squat, for the Reeve D on squat right now, I'm not getting too much movement. Hello, Brian. I'm not getting too much movement on the wheel. So that's one difference. When I do the whole roly-poly effect, when I roll my chassis right now with a limited tune, let's say, it's been tuned, but not to where I'd like it at the moment. But right now, the way I have it set, when I roll, I get movement, I get change on position, so it's creating the bite. Whereas the bite on the TDP is coming way more natural. I'm thinking I can set this car up probably similar to this, to the TDP, the Reeve D one, but naturally the way this rolls, I think is more optimized for weight shift style. Mine I could make like that, but I still like the way my MC1 feels as well. So that's one big difference I took right out of sort of, I guess, like from out of box, noticing the way the rear ends work. The other big difference, if you look right here, just by looking at it, the Reeve D gives you the rear mount ESC. So you put the ESC behind the diff. I have a diffuser on here, which I'm not sure if I'm going to put one on this car, but I might. And you also have a stealth mount piece, which I decided to leave on here as well. They give you that. So on the TDP, the motor sits over the diff, just over the rear diff. No rear ESC, it sits in the middle. So those are sort of some bigger differences visually. But in terms of the way the rear ends work, that's what I was illustrating with the way they roll. So I just wanted to show that off because that's, I think, the main differences in these conversion kits. And I like what TDP has done with the rear end. I like that. I like how they've done that. You can see it again, barely moving. It's moving, but barely. Whereas my Reeve D, just the way my Reeve D set up right now, I'm getting movement. And that's just more of a standardized tune. This one, this is more optimized out of box, just by the design of shock tower and stuff. Both of them very high end, and you can set them up probably very similarly, but I'm just feeling naturally right now, and personal opinion, the TDP is driving a little better out of box than this car, than the Reeve D. And that's just from my out-of-box opinion when I drove this car with the stock 4-hole piston and stock big bore life, and this car right here has stock big bore life. So that's just my opinion. It's like that much. This car is this much better in my opinion, in terms of feel. Honestly, I think really it will just come down to personal preference slash which design you like, because they're so high end. Now, having shown you the TDP out of box, I'm going to show you track owner Brett from Strictly Sideways. I'm going to show you his Reeve D because he has his very highly tuned. So if I show you his rear end, this is what it looks like on bound rebound. So you get some movement like I do. Camber change on squat. On roll, he's getting movement as well, but not as much as me. And driving his car with all the Reeve D parts, the weight shift is much more smoother, fluid, and you can feel everything, like really feel it. So on my Reeve D that doesn't have all the Reeve D parts and isn't fully tuned, I can't fully feel everything, but it's getting similar to this guy, but not entirely. But this car has been like really optimized. It's had weight reduction done in the front end here. Like there's some very personalized style tuning here, but again, Reeve D pretty much everywhere all over this Reeve D MC1. So that's another visual difference. And this car does generate a good amount of side bite, Brett's car. So that's the other thing. You can see that you are getting rear movement here, but it's not as much as my other car. And this is Brett's car. So that's just another example of showing. I'm gonna bring in here the RX. Okay, oops. I'm gonna bring in the stock YD-2 RX. Now one of my buddies out there in Quebec, sorry, I was dropping the camera there, sorry about that. Patrick, he was talking to me about, I asked him about TDP, and he chose an RX to swap all the parts on. And it dawned on me after I built mine that it kind of doesn't matter whether you use an RX or an SX3 because the front ends are practically identical minus the front bumper carbon stuff, but you won't even install that on the TDP. The front ends are practically identical. You don't use the shock tower or the motor mount or the transmission case, but you use the bits inside. You use the shocks, but you don't use the shock tower, excuse me, but you use all the hardware here, which is all the same there. So it doesn't really matter which kit you use, whether you use SX3 or RX. You could use any YD-2 to build this. Best results I think would be to use a higher end chassis to get more parts right away. But I'll show you again the rear end. Here's bound rebound. On this car, this is mostly kit tune, I believe, slash a very light bench tune. So here, out of box, we're getting very little camber change on squat, but on roll, for example, on roll, we get a lot of camber change, like a lot. So that's just stock Yokomo life, stock kit tune. And just so you can see the sort of differences, this car does work pretty good out of box, and in my opinion the RX is a little bit better than the SX3 out of box. I like the feeling of this just a little more than the SX, like just by a little more. And I don't know if it's the rear motor or what, but it just felt just a little bit more planted. So there's that, and that's just Nezo's opinion. The last car I'll show you, which is a completely different concept to pretty much anything out there, a lot different, is the Fantasy. As you can see, this rear end is really different. You're gonna have to go look at this rear end a little more on my unboxing or whatever it was that I showcased it. And if I haven't, I'm gonna make a video. If you can pull up internet photos, and pretty much every one looks a little bit different. But the rear end on this one, right? This has been designed so when you bound up and down, okay? When you go up and down, notice the rear wheels do not move. And I mean they do not move. Look at that. Nothing is happening there. Absolutely no camber change. No, nothing. The even wilder effect is when you roll this chassis and you get the roll going on. Roll your boat. No movement. Absolutely no side-to-side movement. So this car, this chassis has some, this is almost like ahead of its time, I'd say, because the way the rear end works, look at it. Okay, it's a completely different concept to many things out there. It's like a multi-link essentially, but it's just fascinating the way it works, and there's several ways you can set it up. But the idea was 0 tire change on any roll or any rear suspension articulation. And the front end, just to give you a quick look, people think it's a shock tower. Nope, that's an arm tower because it's independent. They are independent of each other. It's completely independent side to side. Wild car. But anyways, it's the rear end I wanted to show you the differences of. Hello, Julian. Hello, Ricky. Oh, you broke your thing, Ricky. That's out of shot. Doesn't work.
I thought you were going to scan through all the rear ends.
Oh, I could scan through the rear end. He was trying to show me his rear end, but it wouldn't compare to this one. Anyways, so that's the difference in those sort of high-end chassis. This one being the most wild. There's only, I think, 100 or 150 of these Fantasy 2s anyway. But I just wanted to show off the difference in rear end and just how they're all working, because we're all focusing on mid-rear setups lately, and that's the hot ticket. Hot rear motor, mid-motor, rear ESC, all that. And sort of this one is the way more advanced design and even tuning. Standard tuning doesn't apply to this car. Everything is different. So I just wanted to show off the rear end and how it rolls. So I'll put this guy back over here. But yeah, TDP, it's a nice conversion kit. I really like how the rear end rolls and functions. It's very cool. The battery holder is very unique and really cool. I really like that. So yeah, I would recommend this conversion kit just as much as the Reeve D. Which one would I tell people to buy? Honestly, it's which one is more appealing to your eyeballs. Seriously, because when you look at them, they are visually different. As you can see, a little bit visual, right? Bracketing, high bracketing here, motor mounting down here, motor mounting up here, things like that. It's a visual difference. So it's really the rear ends and chassis plates is what you're going for. Front ends are identical, like in the sense of the bits there. Front bumper able to mount, cannot mount front bumper. There's little things, but honestly, I would recommend either one. If you want something a little bit more different and newer, go here. The Reeve D has been tried and true now over the last several months, I believe, so it definitely works. A lot of people are already using it, but I'm really excited and interested to see where I can take this TDP. Kept hearing many good things coming out of our friends out of Quebec. People around the world now, including people from Japan, I believe, have even gotten this conversion kit, and they say they like it, and they're starting to put more advanced tuning and time into them. So, you know, sky's the limit, I think, in that sort of sense. But really happy for it. Price point right now here at Strictly Track, this guy Reeve D is I think 550. 550, and the Team Pigeon kit right now is 500. So good value here on the Team Pigeon, that's for sure. You just have to use a few more parts compared to the Reeve D, like a spur gear holder and a couple more parts you have to adapt onto this kit versus the Reeve D, but honestly, not a big deal. And other than that, all I want to do now is drive it, tune it, change to 6-hole piston, change to some really soft springs for some Helen McMillan life. You know those gel soles, or are you gelling? You gelling? This isn't gelling enough. But see, a car like this, that's freaking gelling. Look at that. Look at that gel in action. You want gelling like that. That's what I want for this. So I'm gonna be doing that tuning and testing, and we'll see how she goes. Yeah, thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe. Tell me your thoughts and stuff. And I'm gonna be filming some driving videos. Because this doesn't have a body on it yet, so I'll film some really up-close chassis shots so you can see the chassis working. And yeah, with that, I'll leave you with some few shots here, and see you soon.